Hey guys, what's up? So what you just saw was David Tappan's commercial reel. So David has worked on a very broad spectrum of video content. He's worked on commercials for the likes of the Cavaliers, StockX, Ritz-Carlton, Rocket, Mortgage, lots of those types of companies. And then he's also done a lot of music videos for a lot of young emerging musicians as well. He is a growing filmmaker. He's done a couple of different shorts. He's got a new one coming out soon, and I'm just very excited to talk to him. He's a brilliant artist and a really good friend. So enjoy the conversation. All right, thanks.
Let's just say Dave.
Round one.
Dave round one. Yeah, cool.
Thank you for doing this and just being
sure.
willing to like do it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but
well, we'll figure it out. Yeah,
I think we figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea was basically, I have a lot of peers and a lot of people that I work with that, have these big and, ambitious careers. And, I wanted a podcast, or I was interested in trying to find a way to talk to people who are kind of like in the trenches, like we were talking about on the phone earlier. Mm-hmm. Just because, and, a lot of people talk to experts, as they should, because, they're the pros and they've been doing it for a long time. But I'm very much like interested like in the soldiers, like fighting the good fight too. And it's just like, and those are like my people, right? And I need to get to know more of them. And, the ones that I do have, I also value a lot in the work that you guys put in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I just want to invite you here to kind of like, I know your story obviously, but have, an opportunity to put it on documentation.
Yeah.
And you can use it later on for any kind of like marketing or anything if it's of any value to you. Probably won't, but if it is, that'd be great. I mean, or also just practice for when you're on your next Joe Rogan podcast or something like that.
Sure. We just need the red backdrop and then
exactly.
You need to shave your head and then we're good to go.
I think we're
But
close.
I think the premise of the podcast is cool, and I think you're a good guy to put it on too, because every time I talk to you, I feel like you're always coming up with new schemes for success.
That's the perfect way to put it. I was like, no one's gonna buy into this up to another scheme or another idea.
But it's like they're always very well thought out, and that's what I really respect about it. I feel like that, there's no like half-assed ideas that come out of you. I feel like there's, you study what other success stories have been, and then you sort of reverse engineer it for yourself. So I think you're a good dude to be putting the podcast on. So
yeah, I mean, and ultimately, like, let's get this just a little closer to you, just because I'm not sure it'll pick it up. I just want to make sure it does.
Gotcha. Let me
just whatever's like comfortable.
Rebalance this.
Cool. But like for me personally, like it's like because the nature of my job day to day is very much like administrative and very much like office driven, I really miss like the creative kind of like process. Mm-hmm. And so if nothing else, this is like a really good outlet to explore that.
For sure.
I don't know. And I just like talking to people. I've heard from many people, like people that I don't know, they're like, you should do a podcast. I'm like, why? Like for the longest time, like I didn't get that, but it was just like, it's happened. I don't know. I can't even like think about the amount of times, but often enough to where it was like noticeable, you know, it was like one or two people. So,
well, you know, it's time to jump in and do it then.
Time to jump in and do it. I think it was basically all of like the Quicken Loans training of like being like on the phone all the time. And like having a radio voice or your phone voice.
Sure. Yeah. You bring a good radio voice to the table, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice.
But so David, well, I'll put on my interviewer cap.
You want to wear my hat?
No, you can keep your hat. But we're here to talk about you because you're a very interesting guy. I think you're an interesting guy.
Thank you, sir.
And I think you're a very, very talented guy. Yeah. And I want to give you as big of a platform as possible for people to know about you because I do. I mean, I'm being perfectly genuine. I think you're a fantastic director.
Thank you, sir.
And the stuff that I have seen and the stuff that you're cooking up, I think it's really awesome. So I think even though I know the story, I think what would be great is to first kind of like talk about how you got into filmmaking from like college and then maybe up to your like Woodward original days.
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of directors like had cameras when they were like 3 years old and they were making films. That wasn't me. It took me a little while to find that I wanted to be a director, but I think it was almost always kind of like destined for me in a way where like growing up, I wrote a lot of comics and I'd be like, insert weird Western music here.
Right.
And like, you know, it would be very like cinematic in the way that it was done. And I did a lot of photography and I played piano and I wrote a lot. So I was always doing a lot of creative things. And I kind of always felt like I was going to be an author. But I was always frustrated that I had to write the things down and I couldn't just show.
I could see that. I could see young little David being like, screw this. I don't want to write all this.
It's like, cause I didn't like the words as much. Like the words were annoying. It was just kind of like my mom is an author. So that was kind of like my like model of what it is to be like a storyteller. But then I think it was when I went to college and I took a writing class and I thought it was like a literature writing class, but it was a screenwriting class. And I was like, what the can I curse on this thing?
Yes, I think we can. We're all adults here.
So I was like, what the fuck? Like, I wanted to take this writing class. I didn't want to get into the screenwriting thing, but then it was really interesting and I really actually liked it a lot. And then I volunteered on a film set after that. And I was like, oh, the process of making a movie is also really interesting. And I actually really enjoyed the process of doing the movie making.
Was this like a commercial film set or was this like a student?
This is when I'm a student.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is like, I was a boom operator. And
I've done that job.
And it was me and the sound mixer. We were the tag team, and it was
tall guys usually get that job. You gotta have the reach.
Yeah. I was the taller of the two. I don't know if I identify as a tall man.
You don't identify as tall?
I mean, I'm like,
you can if you want
I'm like right at the threshold. I'm like right around 6 feet. So I guess technically by the dating profile standards, that makes me tall. But anyways, it was not the best film set to be on. It was very half-assed and kind of just like a, slapped together student film.
Sure.
But like just the process was really cool. And I really liked the process of making a movie. And then I, volunteered on more film sets and then just kind of gradually got infected with the disease of making movies.
What elements of that filmmaking process are you most attracted to? You strike me more as like a visual storyteller. I mean, you're very much writer driven, but you're also pretty cool.
Well, it's evolved over time. I think the immediate thing that clicked for me was that it combined all of my interests. Where I liked writing, I liked photography, I liked the comic thing, I liked drawing, I liked music. It did everything in one place. Right. Me being like, insert Western music here in my comics. Like, I could actually put the Western music in. So like it combined all my interests in one format. So I think that was what immediately clicked for me. And then I don't know. There was something about the process I just liked. Like the collaborative process of being on set was
creative
really
problem solving, and it's
it's
fun, and you have to think of interesting ways of getting out of certain things or coming up with certain visuals.
And there's like a introverted and extroverted aspect to it where writing is an introverted process and being on set is an extroverted process. So it kind of gave me an outlet for both sides of my personality.
I've never thought about it that way. That's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
actually.
I think that's why my goal is to be a writer director.
Right.
So I think
be
that's
left alone and then be in charge of a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's because it's like, I get tired when I'm like at a lot of mixers for like long periods of time, but I also get like annoyed when I'm alone for too long. So it's, I think that's part of my personality is I need a little of both. Yeah. So I think that fit in well.
And I think putting a lot of people together towards like one common goal and you have a finite amount of time to do it in, I think is really, really interesting. Because it's like, there's not a whole lot of other places I can think of in nature or just in regular everyday like work life where you have like, a group of people who are just like out in the woods or out in, renting a space.
Maybe going to war or something.
Maybe going to war. I've heard a lot of filmmakers say that filmmaking is a lot like war. So I don't know.
For my extensive experience of going to war, I can say it's exactly like that.
It's exactly like war, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's the thing that's really pulled me in deeper into film is loving that sort of mission aspect of it. And I think earlier on, I was like, the guys I looked up to was like, Kubrick, and I still, of course, love those filmmakers like Kubrick and like the hyper controlling kind of directors. And I, in my films, I want it to have a fingerprint of mine on it. But at the same time, I think what I've really grown into is controlling by losing control in a way, where I'm like taking the reins off and I'm allowing others to fill their thing in to what the film can be, like allowing them to flourish.
Okay.
And acting as like a filter in a way, where you allow the ideas in that fit the overall vision, but being open to others' contributions. I think that's like the most exciting part of the process these days for me. Is like the exploration part of the process.
I think in the best case scenario, you have a team of people there who are all really good in their particular field. Like you have like a set dresser, or you have a costume designer or something like that. And you don't know how to sew, but you have taste and you know what the film's supposed to look like. So best you just get out of the way and let them do it, and then just add your little notes here and there.
For sure.
Then just being like, just in the mix, be like, no, it's got to be like this. And
it's like, so I just directed a short film. It's called Universe 25.
Yes.
So
do we want to talk about Universe 25 now, or do we want to talk about it later?
I was just going to bring up an anecdote from it that so we'll talk more extensively about what the film's about later. But the anecdote is there's this very strange room that the film takes place in. Right. And it kind of I always had like kind of a vague idea of what it needed to be, but it wasn't until I got a production designer involved that we started like creating like a color scheme together, and he brought all these amazing ideas to the table of like this color is going to be associated with this sort of thing, and like the design aesthetic that he brought to the table wasn't exactly what I had in mind. The colors that he brought to the table wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but it like exceeded what the vision could have been, and I would say like in film at its best, that's what should happen in every department.
It's like, I didn't expect this, and it's so much better than what I could have imagined.
Because it's like, I think that's one of the exciting things about film is you don't always know exactly what the final product is going to look like. You have an idea of what it's going to look like. Right. Should we hold for the sirens?
Yes. This is a very loud street.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a good street though.
It's a good street.
Quality street.
Very loud.
Yeah. So what was I saying? I was saying, you have an idea of what it's going to look like, but you don't completely know. Even just not even just from a visual perspective, but from like a tone perspective. Yeah. Of like, I like films that mix a lot of tones that don't really belong together.
Sure. A little juxtaposition.
And it's like cooking a cake. You know what a cake's supposed to kind of look like, but it's not until you actually get the ingredients together and you actually get it out of the oven, that you're like, oh, that's what it looks like. That's cool. You
Yeah.
know? So it's kind of like that, you know, where it's like you have an idea, but then there's an element of surprise of like how everything mixes together and comes together.
That's cool.
And hopefully you don't overcook it or
Hopefully
put it in too much flour.
That's true.
You know,
and the more cakes you make, the closer to what you think it's going to turn out as.
For sure.
It's going to get. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So then you get out of, so you commit to like, all right, I'm going to actually try to cobble together a career out of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And so did you major in film studies?
It was film and media studies.
Film and media studies.
Which was, the media is an important part of that.
Okay.
It was a lot of paper writing. Yeah. But, I really found my way in college through volunteering on film sets, more so than I did in class. But like by the end of college, I was like, all right, this is like what I'm going to do. I'm fully invested in this thing. To like an almost psychotic degree.
It requires that, I think it's almost a necessity.
Yeah.
So you get out of college and then like they give you a piece of paper that says now you're a filmmaker.
Yeah.
They're like, what's like the first couple of months of that, and like what's your first kind of steps?
Yeah.
When you're kind of laying out your plan,
Sure.
like, all right, here's how I'm going to attack this gigantic mountain.
I was kind of lucky in that I, opposed to most people in college within the last 20 years or so, I actually had a job lined up.
Okay.
Before
That's
I was
really great. I did not.
yeah. So I avoided that whole like 6-month year period of like existential dread of like I have this.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
One of my good friends, I went to school in UC Santa Barbara, and one of my good friends, he moved out to Detroit with Venture for America and started working for Dan Gilbert, who is the billionaire that was kind of revitalizing a lot of the city.
Bruce Wayne of Detroit.
Bruce Wayne of Detroit,
yeah.
Owner of many different companies, and the kind of main one being
what's your friend?
Quicken
Who's
Loans.
your friend's name? I don't think
My
I ever
friend's
met
name
him.
is Sean Jackson.
I never met Sean, actually.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. Okay. So Sean moves out to Detroit.
He moves out to Detroit, and he moves out to Detroit. Starts working for Dan Gilbert. They want to start sort of a film something there. I think at the time.
This is like, was John Browie just starting to formulate Woodward Original, or had that not come to fruition yet?
I don't think it was fully a thing at that point. But
him and John were close, and they were talking about.
I think they were technically like Dan Gilbert's video guys.
Right.
And I think Browie was probably at that time visualizing turning it into a production company, but it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
But it was like, all right, we're starting a production company. My friend Sean, he put together, like, he got them on Google Drive.
Right. Wow.
Which this is 2014, at the time, like.
Whoa, yeah. Cloud computing. Holy shit.
Yeah, man, I think I'm aging myself. Oh my God.
No, you all are. It's fine.
Yeah, but it was Sean was helping them organize things and get things together in like a more organized way, because
creating a pipeline essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
An infrastructure.
And, essentially they were just doing like internal video content for, at the time, Quicken Loans, which is now Rocket Mortgage.
Right.
For Quicken Loans, for Dan.
Was this just for like internal like training videos? Was this for like actual like advertising we're gonna put on like commercials and
what
things?
Was it? I think it was just. I think it was a lot of. I don't know if you could say training videos, but it was like more like culture videos.
Yeah, I know what you. I mean, I worked at the con, so I remember. Yeah, they had a lot of those.
But anyways, that's kind of what they were doing. But long story short, Sean recommended me for a job, and in my final year of college, I was driving 2 hours every weekend down to LA, and I was like volunteering as a free PA on AFI sets.
Okay.
American Film Institute sets. Yeah. Which is actually a great place to start.
I recommend anybody.
If you're looking for a way to get started in film, I would say volunteering on AFI sets is really
It's as close to the real thing as you can get, really.
For sure. Yeah. But at the same time, I saw the monumentous mountain ahead of me of trying to be a PA in Hollywood,
Right.
And work my way up to being a director. And I was like, dude, this is going to be rough.
Yeah.
And I was ready to do it. I was going to do it.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay.
Well, also, you can also get stuck in that loop too, where
Yeah.
I mean, there's guys who crew for 20 years, and some people, that's all they want, and that's great.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get into that game wanting to climb the ladder all the way up to being the guy, and I think a lot of them just kind of don't ever get there for one reason or another.
For sure. I think it's part of it is getting like typecast, I think, as a PA, or typecast as an AC, or typecast as
or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you get sort of known as that thing, and it's difficult to break out of being that.
Yeah.
But I saw an opportunity to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, and to get like on the ground floor of maybe a production company. And it's not like I had anything else going on in LA besides more of the same.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, I'll give this a shot. I put everything in my car. I drove across country, and I find myself in Detroit.
It's a hell of a drive.
Yeah, it's actually
I've done that
great
drive. I forget
drive.
how parallel some of our formative life events were.
Maybe
Sometimes in reverse. Though.
Yeah.
You drove out to Michigan. I drove out to LA.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe there's like a Stranger Things upside down.
Could be.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So I go out there.
So you just knew Sean in Detroit.
I just knew Sean. He was the only person I knew.
Okay.
So it's basically like the inverse of the Midwest person coming out to the inverse of you.
I'm going to Detroit to start my Hollywood career. I was that way.
Yeah. But to make kind of a long story short, I basically was there as an intern, and then I badgered them into letting me be a DP, and then I badgered them into letting me direct.
What was your badgering? What was your pitch?
I think it was just my passion, mainly. Just being like, you know, it wasn't like something that was fully formed, and it wasn't something that was fully like organized, I guess, in a way where it's like, this is our process for finding directors. This is our process for doing this. Like, it was very loose, and a lot was still being like figured out on the fly.
So because it was so fluid, you had an opportunity to kind of do multiple jobs.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, I really learned a lot there because I did photography there. I was an editor there. I did cinematography. I kind of did like a lot of the jobs. Yeah. Which I think
it's good. It gives you well-rounded education.
It's valuable now to know how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I think, it's important to know every department.
And when you're a grassroots filmmaker, you're not always going to have a sound guy, or you're not always going to have like, you know, whoever. And so you having the skill set to be able to fill in that gap when needed. Obviously, you don't want to drive yourself into the ground.
Sound is the bane of my existence.
Okay.
Strangely enough, that's how I started. But I mean, I did one set as a boom operator, but I very much dislike sound. So that's the thing I know the least about. But like cinematography, because I've shot a decent amount, you know, I'm no expert, but I know enough to have a conversation, and I know how to edit. I know enough to like guide the process, and, you know, I can jump in at times, but it's not like anything special.
Right.
You know, that gave me a well-rounded background. Basically, like, I think there was a need for shooters because just content needed to be made. They just needed guys to go shoot stuff. Yeah. So I think that was an easier pitch. If anything, actually, it was like the first day on the job, we had to film this like event that was happening in the city. And they just like gave me this like cinema camera, and they're like, "Go film with this."
Is this like what is this?
This is like a Sony. This is like this is like a Sony FS100 or something. Nice. So like kind of cinema camera.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd only shot on DSLRs at this point.
Sure.
So like I was like kind of intimidated by all the buttons on this thing.
Did you Google tutorial? How do I use the Sony?
I think they gave me a crash course of some sort, because I knew, like, you know, white balance and, you know, the basics. Not to you know, bore your audience with technicals. But basically, you know, they foisted that upon me. Being a camera guy, and it's like, you know, I enjoyed it. I like doing it, but ultimately, like, I really wanted to direct, and I think it was, I think what allowed me to get to that point was a couple things. One was the fluidity of the nature of the company at the time, which wasn't a company. It was still, we were still like Dan's video
guys, yeah.
And then
Not a bad name for a company though.
Damn, yeah, for sure. So it was that. I think it was my passion and my just like insistence upon it.
Yeah.
And then I think also it was
and the opportunities. Like, if nobody else is going to do it, then you just like.
Well, I at the time Browie was really directing a lot of the content.
Okay.
So like, which rightfully so, he started the team. You know,
Sure.
he's going to be the guy that's going to be doing a lot of that stuff. But
Yeah.
but I think it was when there was so much work that he couldn't do everything, and I think there was so much that was happening on the team that he had to start managing more of that.
Yeah.
He couldn't do everything. So I think there was some delegation that started to happen.
Yeah. Is this like a year in, or like how deep in are we at that point?
Probably about a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think about a year. But I think the last thing also was I directed my first short film, Chocolate and Cigarettes, and that was like literally, besides the random things I'd done in college, that was like one of the very first things I had directed. And all things considered, it went pretty well.
Yeah.
I think they saw that, and then I think that's what kind of finally gave them the hope to like, you know, trust me and do that. Yeah. So like then they kind of gave me the keys to a few smaller things, and I learned some lessons and worked my way up from there. So
also, by the way, a path that is like well trodden. I mean, lots of like big time directors guys start in like advertising or in, you know, like these types of. I mean, didn't Christopher Nolan do like instructional corporate videos?
Stuff. Yeah, and I think like, Ridley Scott was like a commercial director until he was
for
like
a long
40.
time. Yeah,
David Fincher did a lot of commercials and music videos, so I think that is like I think Spike Jonze did some music videos and stuff like that.
I look at like filmmaking and like directors and like the people who like we all know and talk about, like there's basically, in my view, there's like a handful of paths, right? There's like there's not as many, like people say like, oh, there's no like one right way. Like I think it does boil down to like a handful. I think there are people who come in the ad world or music videos or like supplementary content, and then those people just transition into long form features and things like that.
Yeah.
I think you have some people who kind of come up within the industry who are like, you know, they work as assistants or they work as, you know, they work for other directors who kind of like help them with their writing or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you have just sort of like the indie guys who go out into the wilderness, make their own thing, and then they gain some notoriety through those circuits.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'm not aware of too many other paths. I think there might be an emerging path with more like digital content and more like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's been, I can't point to a guy who's like, oh, he came up from like YouTube or Instagram.
Those guys are probably more like the on-camera talent than they are the like behind the camera
think so.
talent.
I think that's right.
I'm kind of a hybrid between the like indie path and the commercial kind of path.
Yeah,
like
I think that's right.
Commercial.
I'm just gonna cycle through the video here.
Oh, sure. Do your thing. Yeah.
Go ahead and keep talking. The audio is still recording.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, commercials are like how I'm making my living. But I would say, I would say that I don't know for me if it's a viable path directly into making movies. I think
Commercials?
I think it's a way. I think there's synergy, but I don't think it's like anyone's just going to hand you the keys to the castle based on your commercial work. I think you have to make your own stuff, particularly as a writer director, where you're like, for me, I'm trying to like shape a voice, and make that voice the commodity, like a you know Wes Anderson type of thing, you know, where you know it's almost like creating a genre in a way, like with like a Kubrick or a Wes Anderson or a I don't know, I'm spacing the other guys.
Well, one of the things that makes any director valuable is their voice. I mean, it's like, oh, I want that kind of look, or I want that kind of like voice, or, you know, that's how these guys build these phenomenal careers. It's like only Tarantino can make a Tarantino movie. And only, you know, Nolan can make a Nolan movie. Like, like you can't ask somebody else, like, can you just do it like that guy? Like they'll just go and get that guy.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, at the highest levels.
Yeah. And it's like, if, you know, I think it never really works to be like a Tarantino ripoff because because
it's like why not just get Tarantino?
And it's just not coming from an authentic place. And I think Tarantino has a very he has like a depth of references that he pulls from. And if it's almost like when you start photocopying a photocopy and then you photocopy that photocopy, it loses some like integrity.
Yeah.
You know.
That's fair.
Anyways, that's sort of the path I'm navigating towards, is how to be, you know, it's ambitious, but how to be one of those guys.
Sure.
You know, I found some success in the commercial world, and now I'm really shifting a lot of my focus back. Now that I'm more financially stable in that capacity, I'm shifting a lot of my focus back into, all right, now how do I start paying more of my bills through my like art?
Yeah.
You know.
What was it like directing LeBron James?
Oh, all right. So
I want to hear that whole story.
Okay. You know, it's.
He directed LeBron James. You don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't like a directing thing.
I know, but still, it's a cool story.
Yeah. So the story with that is, so Dan Gilbert, whose video team I'm on, is the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Right.
At the time, I think it was, when did he just announce he was going back to Cleveland? Was that 2015 or 2014?
Gosh,
I think that was 2014.
I think
it was 2014.
Yeah, by the time I was there, he was already back. So that was 2015.
2015. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he won in 2016. That's when they won the championship. And I
Yeah.
think they had lost once or twice.
Yeah.
Anyways, very shortly into my job,
Right.
they announce LeBron James is coming back to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Right.
And then Dan wants to capture the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts this, project to capture it, and tasks his personal video team.
Kind of like a PR rollout kind of thing.
More of like a documentary, like an HBO documentary kind of a
like
thing.
a 30 for 30 kind of
Yeah. So anyways, we are going out and basically filming at every game. This is the first time I've ever had courtside seats,
cool.
where I'm basically like sitting next to the dudes with like the 50-pound cameras, sitting on the floor.
You got the
with my like Sony FS 100. Yeah.
Nice.
You know,
You think Dan would spring for a better camera?
Yeah. But I think ultimately it was just about like capturing it and just having the content.
Yeah. Coverage.
But anyways, yeah, we're basically going there, sitting on the seat on the court, filming, and then in the locker room after wins, not after losses. After wins,
yes.
we go in and we film there, and we're kind of filming the whole victory thing.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, though, like, you know, it was a fun process, but that project hasn't really materialized into anything. So,
I know.
You know, but it was fun and life-changing, and very cool to see greatness that up close.
Sure.
I think that, that in and of itself, I think will impact you. Like seeing,
somebody like the
being
top of their
that
game.
close to like something historic like that, you know, like, so anyways, that was a fun process, but I would say the biggest part of being in Detroit was being able to grow a director's portfolio.
Well, I think that's, I mean, to be able to cover, that was definitely like a cultural moment, especially in the Midwest. Like people were very like excited about that at the time.
Yeah.
So I think being around that is cool. And I think it does establish you a little bit more credibility.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any fun Dan stories?
Fun Dan stories. Man, it's been so long. Let me try to think on that.
Okay, maybe come back to it if you think of one.
Honestly, it's like I feel like that whole era of my life for specifics are just complete. It's just a blur. Because honestly, we were working like 80 hours a week.
I know.
Like it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
So I've thrown out a lot of memories.
That's
I honestly
fair.
throw out the majority of my childhood for like wide shots and French films. So me and my sister, we have a writing team, and she has like a steel trap of a memory. I have a steel trap of a memory for films, but she
not
has
your own life.
but not my own life, and she always gives me shit that like, she'll remember my childhood better than I do because I've thrown them all out for wide shots.
She should be
like,
your documentarian.
I guess. I mean, I loved my time in Detroit. I think it was great, but ultimately, like, I didn't have
Got
ties
a lifelong
there.
friendship out of the deal, so
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Honestly, like, a lot of my best friends are from Detroit. I will always have ties there. But ultimately, like, my family doesn't live there. The industry at large isn't there, especially after the film incentive in Detroit and Michigan left.
It was looking like it might happen for a while, and then it just didn't. And it just never materialized.
I just think I read a statistic that like 40 out of 50 states have a film incentive.
Yeah, but none of them are as aggressive as Georgia's. So it's like hard to.
But like Detroit, Michigan doesn't even have a single film incentive, which is
Not
just
anymore,
a little wild. That like so many states have a film incentive, but they don't have it now. Anyways, I think ultimately I was starting to realize that like I was tying my roots in a place where long term it didn't really make sense for me to tie my roots, and I was pushing back this transition to LA for a very long time.
Were you ever kind of like weighing your options, like, oh, like I could actually like cobble out like a nice life here and like settle down, buy a house, and do all that, or was it so strong the pull to be like, I really got to make this move? It's just really a matter of like when.
I think it was kind of getting caught a little bit in comfortability of having a steady paycheck and having work that comes to you and building a portfolio and being afraid to not continue to grow in a freelance sort of capacity. So in all candidness, that was a large part of it. Was it's a scary move to completely uproot your entire life and go to LA, where that was kind of what I was running from. Was that and like that grind of being a PA and just like working my way up. So I think I was like putting it back by wanting to have a better portfolio before coming out here. But then I think I realized that there's never a right time to make a leap.
Well, they say like the most addictive drug is a steady paycheck. So
for sure, for sure. It's tough once you're in that. It's really tough to like to not do it. But it's
Was there like a defining moment or like a defining set of circumstances where you're like, all right, it's time to leave? Or was it just kind of...
There's one, I think it was like a slow burn, but I think there was one thing that might have broken the camel's back. And I think, I'm not going to name the film festival, but it's a local film festival in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And my film went there, and then at the screening, I brought a date, I brought my friends, and then there was just... The other films that were playing there were just abhorrently atrocious.
This is trash.
And I was like, I can't believe I'm putting my film in, like, I can't believe this is what I'm doing with my life right now. Like, literally one of the films was 10 seconds out of sync, where the film. This
is all very like amateurish.
Incredibly amateur. One film was a guy. It was a close-up on a de-thawed chicken breast as he was punching it with heavy metal music and weird color treatments coming in over top.
Yeah.
So it was just like
it
was just like a wild thing. Not to say that's the entirety of Michigan's film production by any stretch, but I think I was just like frustrated with like this is sort of like what's happening.
Well, I look at it like, that was very much like a proving ground for you, where it's like you could like, it's like the minors versus the majors, right? And like at a certain point, like you have to, if you're really serious about it in a real way, it's like you have to, like LA is like the Super Bowl. Like it's like this is like where pros come to play. And yes, you can obviously, once you establish yourself, you can kind of migrate to other areas. But in terms of just like territories that are known for filmmaking, it's like Los Angeles, New York, London, and then maybe like a handful of like other cities and like foreign markets that I'm unaware of. But it's if you're really going to do it, especially in the US, it's like you have essentially 2, maybe 3 options if you include Atlanta. So you got to do it.
For sure.
So you pack up your car and you do it.
Basically I get to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm done with this place.
And was Kelly already all in at this point as well, or did that take some convincing?
All in on film? Or
no, all in on like moving out here as well. And like,
I think it was just timing. Timing worked out, because I think she went to school at UC Davis and she wanted to be she is an actor.
Yes.
At the time wanted to be an actor. I don't know if she really had another option really besides coming down to LA. So she was graduating at the time I was sort of wrapping up in Detroit. And so she was coming down. I was like, all right, also, I'm going to have a roommate in LA. I'm going to be able to split rent. I think that was another thing that kind of
made it possible.
helped the transition, was like, I'm not going to have to get this one bedroom for like $1,800 and like destroy my finances. Like, you know, I was able to get a better deal. It's a little less intimidating with family.
Did you move out here with a little bit of cash, or you kind of just like...
You have to build up savings before moving out here. So I would say like 3 to 6 months, you should have that locked in.
To move out to LA.
To move out to LA. That was sort of the figure that I was quoted, and that's what I would recommend.
That's fair. I was a little bit more risk averse and saved up for like a year. I was like, if I can't figure something out in a year, then that's like my fault.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think 6 months is appropriate. I think most people, maybe you're not getting like a job like in the town, but like you can find a job that will like pay your rent. Like, or you can Uber, or you can do something.
For sure. There's ways to survive. There's ways to make it work. You can make it work. But you move to LA, and it's like it's tough.
Yeah, that first day where you like get everything unpacked, and then you just kind of like look around, you're like, all right, now what do I do?
Yeah, for sure. It's really the first year is really hard.
What was your strategy going into it, and then how did that change as it like became real?
Okay. I think I came with like an intention to just direct, and I think there was some flexibility that was needed at first to be able to switch into multiple roles. I think.
Are you trying to get directing jobs right when you move here, or are you
basically? I'm just meeting up with like.
You're networking.
I'm networking. I'm meeting up with like commercial agencies and production companies and stuff.
And you had a reel.
And I had a reel. I think basically my Detroit experience is the only reason I was able to come here and direct.
Yeah.
It is pretty slow at first, and you need to be willing to hustle while you're getting things stood up.
Yeah.
I think really the main thing with it though is like it's just a mental test, particularly because
it's a crucible.
Like 10 months into my move here, the pandemic hit. So I think that really extended the pain of the move, because just like I basically from like March of 2020 until November of 2020, I didn't work. So that's rough. That's probably like, in screenwriting terms, the dark night of the soul. Like the extended crisis. And then
that was a prolonged period. It was just
really
like
rough.
It's not like a month where it's like, oh, you had like a bad month. It was like, this is never gonna end.
Yeah, for sure. It was like 9 months to flatten the curve.
But okay, so during that time, like you're not getting jobs. So like first of all, how are you surviving? And then like how are you kind of pivoting during that time to like, all right, I gotta cobble together a new strategy?
I will say that the unemployment that came in during that period was one of the things that really helped. So thank you, Daddy Government.
Listen, I've taken unemployment before. It's not fun. Like, thankfully, I only had to do it for like a month. But I mean, that's why those systems are in place. It's like for people who, there's a hardship, and then you have to participate, and then obviously you hope that you get out of it. And for most people, they do. But to have that floor, I think, is like
for sure
important.
And it was like it was the pandemic assistance thing that they specifically set up. Right. Because of the shutdowns. Like, this wouldn't have been needed if it wasn't.
You were working, you were getting jobs.
Yeah. It was actually like phasing up to a point where I was like, okay, maybe I'm sustainable now. Yeah. And then, okay, you shut down everything. So at a certain point, I'm grateful for it. But at another point, it's like, guys, you shut everything down. Like,
right.
This is kind of like hand in hand. Both of these things are little, kind of needed.
Well, not only that, it's also like the building your network and your circle and your Rolodex as you're going out and getting jobs, and like, because a lot of, especially like the commercial work, is a lot of like referral business. Like
for sure,
it's repeat business. People who need something else. Somebody like, oh, I got a really great guy. His name's Dave. You should give him a call. Like, and when that's not happening on a regular basis, it makes for scarcity.
For sure. Luckily, we live in the time of internet, though, and I was able to get the ball rolling through like online job listings where people are like, I need a dude to shoot my like yoga channels video, or like, random stuff like that. Like, I am launching a startup and I need some guy to make my pitch video. Like, so I found a lot of those types of things. I bought a camera so I could do a lot of like directing, shooting. And that's sort of how I phased everything up. And then through that, I think the referrals started coming in. And then once the referrals started coming in, that made me sustainable. And then, the budgets from that point sort of start to grow, and you start to find more serious clients. You start to find more like actual commercial work instead of like, corporate run and gun type of stuff. So I think it phases up from there, but that's sort of how I phased up. I would also say music videos is another area I like grew into a lot since coming out here. And I'd say that is really what allowed me to like form a voice as a director, more so than working on staff at a company where you're sort of tasked with, hey, do this company's video. Instead, I have an artist that's like, hey, here's my song. What do you want to make? And
you pitch a vision for that project versus like a company where it's like you're working for them essentially. It's like, we need
for sure
these interviews,
and you're still working for the artist, of course. But I would say most artists are way more creative and way more open to ideas, and like interpretations of their brand versus
And the whole nature of a music video is different than like a corporate, like, pitch video. I mean, it's the whole merit of it is creative expression.
Exactly.
So it's just in vocal form or sound.
Yeah. So I would say like if Detroit gave me like a technical boot camp, I would say music videos over the last 2 years have like been a like vision. I don't know what you want to call it, artistic boot camp. Just allowing you to shape and form a voice. That is coherent, and just finding your style. I feel like I've always had an idea of what my style is, but you really like shape it out more so when you're like in the trenches every day doing music video stuff. That's like really forcing you to shape your style more so than doing a short every now and again. Because you can't afford to finance a short more than every now and again. So it's nice to get paid. Music videos aren't the most lucrative thing, but you still get paid a bit, and you get some budgets, and you get.
It seems like a good like in between lane though. It's like it's a little bit creatively fulfilling. It's a little bit like financially like gets the job done. Like you're not gonna make several months of rent, but it's like it's enough to be worth your time.
For sure.
What's up, guys? Quick intermission here. I really wanted to, at this point in the conversation, to highlight David's music video directing ability. So anyways, just enjoy this.
1, 2, 3. Girl, you know you got it easy. You got me tossing and turning, thinking of what we could be. I've been searching for the words, but how do I say everything I need to? Everything I need to. I've been trying to get you out to something out to grind. You've been haunting me for 40 days and 40 nights. I know better than to keep checking if you're still all night. I can't help it, I can't help it.
And now, back to the program.
For sure. Yeah.
How would you describe like your taste and your palette now?
You know, I think it's difficult to describe your own taste sometimes.
Okay.
I think I used to have this pitch of what my thing is, and I don't know if it's fully accurate anymore, but I'll give you what the pitch was.
Okay.
The pitch I'd say is like a mix of like surrealist visuals and like mumblecore performances. Mumblecore meaning like the Duplass brothers or you know, Barry Jenkins or anything A24 is putting out, really, where it's like very real to life raw performances, and combining that with genres and cinematic expression that typically isn't put to mumblecore.
Okay.
A lot of times mumblecore is very docu-style, handheld kind of a thing.
Right.
And I think I'm interested in taking mumblecore, but what happens if you put it in a heightened reality? What happens if you put it in an extreme situation? What happens if you mix that with like Lynchian forms of surrealist, you know, forms of storytelling? And I think it can be an interesting. Mix. So that's actually probably accurate. I particularly with like where I want to move in narrative, scripted sort of work. The older pitch was like, I'm inspired by dreams, memories, and nightmares. I think that's kind of the buckets I work in. I still think that's somewhat accurate. I think to explain what I mean by that, like dreams is sort of like this Technicolor La La Land kind of, old Hollywood, heightened reality, surrealism. You know, I'm really drawn to like old Hollywood, like the Humphrey Bogart types of things. That era of the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. I had a love for that for a very long time. I still love it.
That's very much expressed in your first short too. I felt like.
For sure. Yeah, I think that was my outlet for that. So that's where the dream sort of aspect comes from. Nightmares is more of like a Lynchian, like Yorgos Lanthimos, very dark, weird, twisted version of surrealism. Like tapping into like the subconscious in a much darker way. And then the memories, I think, comes in from like mining your own memories and mining life for those mumblecore details of how to make things realistic. Because I'm not about like, I used to be more about like stylized performances, but I don't think that's really where I am anymore. I really like, I like sometimes will turn movies and shows off after like a minute because of the performances, just because I'm probably being overly like aggressive, but like performances are really important to me.
Well, I think as a director, like your tastes are allowed to evolve. You know, I think anybody who's been doing it long enough, it has evolved. Like I think anybody who's like big, they have a natural progression of like their aesthetic. So
yeah.
That's cool.
And I would say the progression for me has been from visual to performance. I think I started more visual, and now I think I've always liked performance, but I think it's really kind of my like number one priority in a way. Is if the performance isn't there, you don't have a movie.
Sure.
And yeah, I'd say that's what the progression is.
Cool.
Has gone from. Yeah.
Okay, so like during like COVID, and then like I would say we're kind of like in a post-COVID world now. What does your like day-to-day look like? Like what kind of jobs are you booking? What's on the horizon? And then also
so I think that's an interesting question, because I think it ties into what I think the thesis of your podcast is, which is like, hard work and how to I don't know. I think this is where I might have a few things to share, just in terms of,
please,
like my daily routine.
I
think is something I've really developed over time. I think when you start in a freelance world, it's very unstructured, and it's easy to get kind of like sidetracked and unstructured and wake up late and not be disciplined. It's really easy to not be disciplined. And I think that is something that I've really developed is developing a daily routine, developing things in that routine that really help you stay mentally locked in.
Okay.
Like during the pandemic when I wasn't working, I would say that was the biggest transformation for me.
And I would say you are very disciplined. Like I try to hit you up to go out. I'm probably a bad influence on you. Like let's go and get drinks. Let's go meet some.
I'm just extra.
You're like, I'm working.
I'm extra. I'm a little psycho.
Listen, that's why you're probably gonna win the game. That's great.
Yeah. But like during the pandemic, I think is when I really developed this, is because it was so unstructured, just sitting in your house all day, that I had to like. I started meditating more. I started doing daily affirmations. I started stretching every day.
Okay.
I started working out. I started tracking these habits in a way that I hadn't tracked it before, where I create on my wall, there's a habit tracker, and every week I have a goal of how many things I'm trying to hit, and I started with like, I have to meditate 5 days a week. I have to do the affirmations 5 days a week, all these things. I track them.
Do you hit those pretty consistently?
I used to be more inconsistent, but I think something has shifted within me within the last, should I keep talking?
Yeah, go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah. Something has shifted within me within the last few months, where I've been on like a 8-week meditation streak where I haven't broken it once.
Really?
That's like a huge accomplishment for me, really. Wow. Is doing that. Like basically since I wrapped my short film, I had a few weeks of like being like sleeping.
Okay. Sleep's
and then,
good. It's also it's good. It's good for you.
But then I noticed that like when I'm not meditating, when I'm not taking care of the mental part of the game, it really impacts you in a negative way. So you have to be very disciplined with it, and you do it first thing when you wake up. And I think the biggest game changer is if you don't look at your phone when you wake up the first time. Okay. I noticed when I go on TikTok, first thing when I wake up, my mind is like legitimately like 33% more ADD that day. Like
so this is like life hack stuff.
These are some life hack things.
Yeah,
and
stay away from the phone.
And if you stay away from the phone in the morning, like you're just much more present and you're much more locked in through your day. And you're not like, I find when on the mornings when I wake up and I look at my phone, I'm looking at my phone unconsciously throughout the day. Yeah. And that's death to productivity. You know, like sometimes like it's like a part-time job, the amount of screen time that I'm putting into social media. Yeah. Not even like productive time, just like scrolling.
No, I'm guilty too. Yeah. I mean, I get it.
Which is unacceptable if you're in freelance. So like being disciplined in that way, I think is really important.
So basically just a structured day is like really important. Yeah. So like when you're breaking out your day, is like a certain portion of that dedicated to editing, to outreach, to like what's sort of like the breakdown?
So I would say I used to be...
Because you can't just sit there and wait and be like, well, I hope a job comes in today.
Yeah. I used to be way more structured with it, where I'd be like, from this time to this time, I'm doing this. From this time to this time, I'm doing this. Yeah. That didn't really work for me because I would find that like stuff would come up and then I would throw it out the window every day. Mm-hmm. So basically what I do is every morning I do the routine thing. An hour is spent on like the meditating, the affirmations, the stuff like that.
That's great. I love hearing that.
And then do breakfast and read, and then I set my goals for the day. And once I set my goals for the day, I'll kind of order them in a rough order of what. That's
something I've been wanting to do, and I haven't, is like either a weekly or like daily ritual of just like this is what I want to hit. Mm-hmm. And
you should. It really is quite helpful. And it just I think the thing with, take it from a guy who was like in freelance, waking up at like 10 a.m., which is like death. That's death to freelance. Yeah, okay. Take it from a guy who's doing that. Like it just takes slowly getting the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. Once you get the ball rolling a little bit, then it starts to maintain a momentum of its own. Mm-hmm. Like now that I used to like be horrible at meditating, where I'd like meditate like 3 days a week, or I'd skip entire weeks for weeks at a time. and I would notice my mental health would suffer, and I'd notice my productivity would suffer.
Yeah.
And then now that I'm doing it literally 7 days a week, it's almost natural. It's not even like a drain on me to do it. So it just takes a little bit of push.
Yeah.
I would say, so I don't just set my goals for the day though. I set my goals for the week. I set 2-month goals. I set 1-year goals, and I set 3-year goals.
That's great.
And then each of those, and then basically you take your 3-year goals, and at the end of the year, you set your 1-year goals to reach the 3-year goals. And when you reach the 2-month goal, you set the 2-month goal to reach the 1-year goal.
Are these financial goals? Or are these just sort of like ethereal, like professional goals? Like I want to produce something of this level at this point.
I think it's important to be concrete with your goals.
Yeah.
Because if you're setting like, be biggest director of all time.
Yeah.
Like that's not a productive. That's not a productive goal to set. But if you say like, I want to have written and directed a feature film by X date, that is something you can measure. If it's measurable, I think it. I forget what the thing is that people say, but your goals have to be like measurable and
the SMART goals. They have to
yeah.
be specific. They have to be measured. There's an acronym, and I forget what it is.
That's the one I'm thinking
But it's like
of.
they have to be
Yeah.
specific. They have to have like a time allotment for it.
For sure.
There's a whole bunch of like criteria for like what's like an actual like real goal.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Is that. So whatever that is, I try to do it.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, it's a mix of financial goals of X number of earnings per month. It is like in the long term, like invest in a property or certain things like that you want to invest in.
Yeah.
But really, it's like breaking down. Okay, I want to have written and directed a feature film. And that's a 3-year goal of mine. A 1-year goal for this year was write and direct a short film, which I've done.
And you're going to hit. Yeah.
And I mean, it has been hit, luckily. There's some other things that didn't happen, but I think it's important to be a little ambitious with your goals because then you kind of like, if you shoot for Jupiter, you'll hit the moon or whatever the saying is.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's also like, there's like stretch goals. There's things that like you don't know exactly how they'll come about, but it's like you have faith and you want to strive towards it, even though it feels a little bit out of reach. And then you have goals that are like very much like I know how to do this. I just need to put in the time and dedicate the resources to it.
Yes. Yeah. And, for sure. And I think some of them are difficult where it's like, like direct a certain level of agency commercial. There's like that's a goal is to like have
like a brand,
like some sort of like, but it's like some of those things are just like, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
So there's some things like write and direct a short film though, that's completely in your hands and you can do it, and it's your fault if it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of both of those things. So I'd say that's how that's like a 1-year goal, and then a 2-month goal would be, write the thing. And then the next 2-month goal might be get through pre-production, and then the next 2-month goal might be shoot it and now edit it. So and then each week is a reflection of the 2-month goal. So it's really just like breaking down these big picture goals into your weekly goals and into your daily goals. And I think it gives you peace in your day to day, because every day I'm at least getting one step closer to my big things.
Well, it's compounding elements. It's like, okay, you want to have a short film by the end of the year. It's like, all right, there's a lot of mini goals that need to occur before you have that one done. It's like you said, like you have to write it, you have to put it in pre-production, you have to shoot it, you have to edit it. So all those are mini goals. And then like within each of those goals are even smaller goals. Like I want to write the damn thing. Yeah. And it's like, all right, I need to have it be X amount of pages. How many pages can I do it? Can I lock down a concept this weekend?
Sure.
Can I lock down, a character past this, and that's really, I think a lot of creatives, me included in this, can kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit, where it's like you want it to be so good they forget to actually do it, and it's like that can mean death. I mean, it's just like you have to, at a certain point, like it could be better, but it's also like you have to pull the trigger, or it's not going to happen. And I've tried to get better at that over the year. Hence, like,
But
it's just like, you know, you just have to like do it, and it won't be great. It won't be perfect, but it's at least a step towards the doing of it is like progress.
For sure.
It's like working out. Like, you know, you're not going to see results in a day, in a month. You know, it sometimes a year. Like, you just have to keep going. And you
I think it's like what I'm saying about habits of getting the ball rolling.
Yeah.
You know, like I think a lot of things in life are interconnected. There's patterns that exist through all of it. And, you know, me starting, if let's say I haven't been working out in a few months.
Yeah.
If I want to get back into that, I'm not just going to go into a full force workout that's just going to destroy me.
Yeah.
You know, you start with like a jog.
One achievable goal.
Yeah, for sure. And then that applies to like, you know, doing getting a short film done. It can be overwhelming if you're like, I have to achieve this whole thing.
Right.
Like, how do I even start there? It's like, okay, just start with 1 day of writing this week.
Yeah.
And then, you know, okay, next week, let's do 4 days, 3 days of writing. And you scale it up until you're then working at a high level of productivity.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's important to take breaks and not always work at that high level of intensity, because sometimes your body requires it. And I've had to manage my energy in the sense of like, I'm a workaholic to the sense I'll like burn out.
Right.
So I'm either at like 0 or I'm at 100. So when I burn out, then I have to like watch Netflix and just like collapse.
Yeah.
And like just be dead. That used to be the cycle that I'd go through. Now I'm going between like 190, where you'll scale down so that way you can work at a higher level, you know, kind of a thing.
Well, it creates consistency, which is ultimately how I think anything gets accomplished. I think it's really just about consistent, basic effort, you know, and, you know, everyone looks at like these big successful people in entertainment in any industry. They think like, oh wow, they're such a, you know, maverick. They figured out so many things, when a lot of them have just figured out like one thing really well, and they've done it a bunch of times. Like they've just, you know, like they're a finance guy, and they just figured out how to do finance a lot. Like Dan Gilbert's a really good example. Like he's like, well, I'll learn how to do mortgages, and he did mortgages, and then he just kept doing it, and he just kept hiring more people, and then obviously his role, and he got more advanced as he went on, but you know, now look at the guy. He's like worth like $40 billion or something.
For sure.
But he literally just got really good at selling mortgages to a lot of people. Really, if you boil it down.
I think it reminds me of, I think it's the Einstein quote where he says like, genius is 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration.
Yeah, all the cliches are true. That's really annoying. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is true.
It's kind of true. Because like, I think it's like, to operate at a high level on any field, it's not like you need to be born with this like, you know, magic gene in your brain. I mean, like dudes like Elon Musk are just like, you know,
there's
like,
some aliens amongst us. I believe that.
You know, they're like incredibly smart people.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't be a dummy. But at the same time, I think how you get good at something is just repetition. You know, and like, you need to have the passion for that thing to push through the failures, to want to do that thing.
So as you're playing the game, the filmmaker game, and doing that right now, like how do you kind of like see yourself in contrast, like other people trying to do it? Like, how do you like, I guess you already kind of covered like maintaining your mental state, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of this town and a lot of what we do is a lot of like mental gymnastics that don't need to be done, and it's just like,
what do you mean by mental gymnastics?
Just like people want to be X by a certain time, like they want to you know, people like a lot of people want to do like, they put like time horizons on themselves, and like you said, like good to be specific, like you want to hit certain benchmarks, but there's also forces outside of your control. So it's like, you know, if you want to direct like a movie in 3 years, like totally possible, but there's also a lot of things that can happen that can like not, that can,
you got to dance with the universe.
I like that. Have you said that before?
I don't think so.
I like that a lot.
Because it's like,
I'm gonna steal that.
Because like if you're overly, because like sometimes like when you're about to reach a 3-year goal, sometimes you're like, all right, some of these things haven't been achieved.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to be open to what like the universe is giving you.
Yeah.
You know, where like during the pandemic, I started picking up more like scripted writing work from like one producer that I know, and she hired me to like help develop some like, you know, ideas for TV shows and stuff like that.
Right.
Unfortunately, none of them have panned out into anything, but
okay.
But it was like being open to being like, okay, maybe this is where I'm being led right now.
Maybe lean into it.
Lean into that, and then, oh, that's slowing up. Okay, I should probably go into music videos, and then I do that, and then I'm like, all right, there's not a lot of money in music videos.
Right.
Maybe I should go into commercial stuff. Okay, I like it, but is that why I'm on Earth?
Right.
Okay, maybe I should be doing more like scripted narrative things that I'm doing, and who knows what the path is going to lead me to next. But that's kind of like a loose, bouncy ball path of me through the pandemic to here. And yeah, so to your point, I think you can't be overly fixed with your time horizons. You can't be overly fixed with, I have to do this specific way.
Yeah.
You have to like navigate your way.
I like the idea of like being firm on the goals but flexible on the details. Like that's sort of like been my approach.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You know, you take a stab at it, and maybe that particular angle works, and you can follow that path down a little ways. Sometimes it doesn't. That door's closed. It's like, all right, I got to try another door.
Totally. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
So I am really excited to see your short. I would like to get an early cut of it if at all possible at a certain point.
Yeah, I'll send you a cut. Yeah,
that'd be great. What can you talk about it all, or are you kind of just saving that for festivals?
I'll talk about it.
Okay.
It's a short film
for our massive audience.
Yeah, it's a short film. We're not doing Batman here. You know, it's like I think talking about it is good.
Yeah, I think
it gets more people interested.
I like it. Yeah.
So basically, it's something I've been working on for about a year. I would say the journey to this has been like a 3-year journey, though. Where, as I mentioned, my sister and I, we moved out to LA at the same time. We formed a writing team I don't think that was the plan, but I think we realized, I feel like we realized we come from a similar cloth because we're raised together. You know, it's like the Coen brothers or any of those
similar
types of
sensibilities.
things. Yeah. So I think we realized that we actually wrote well together, and then we've been basically writing really bad scripts for 3 years or 2 years or however long.
Okay.
But cutting our teeth, learning the process, how to write. And then I think we finally landed on something, a concept at least, that we felt like had a lot of potential. Like we almost greenlit a few things.
And that's produceable.
Yes, and producible, yeah.
Because it's like, I got this great spaceship idea. It's like, great, that's going to cost $1 million.
Totally. And I think we had some stuff in the past that maybe was a little ambitious, but more importantly was just not creatively what we wanted to achieve. We almost greenlit it just because I was getting to a point where I was like, we need to make something. I haven't made a short.
That gold clock was ticking in your head.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And just like, I do think the universe rewards people who act with urgency and don't dilly-dally around. And I felt like I was dilly-dallying around a little bit on the short film thing. I was like, we need to get something made. We need to get something produced. We can't just sit around here and not make anything. But you can't just make something to make something.
Right, yeah.
And if it's not fully up to quality, like, are you going to invest a large amount of your savings into something that isn't going to do anything?
Yeah.
So I think we got to a point where we had an idea where we were going to greenlight it. We realized it wasn't what we wanted, which was a difficult decision to make, but then we kept writing, kept brainstorming new ideas until we landed on this current thing.
Because if I remember from our conversations, this idea kind of came about relatively quickly. Like, in terms of like, you had the other one, and then you were like, no, we're actually doing this one. And then like things started like pop pretty quickly.
I think it's kind of been like a slow burn of development. I probably told you about this like later in the process, but I don't talk about a lot of creative things while they're in development.
You hide a lot of things from me.
Because, it's like, I think I just don't like talking about creative things early in the process because it's like, exposing an embryo to like a storm, you know, like
The anecdotes today are strong, man.
like you gotta keep that shit in the womb for a little while.
You gotta let it cook.
You gotta let it cook because it's like once there's something that happens once you start talking about an idea too early, and I think it you start to second guess it and you become insecure, and it's like if it's because ideas are really bad for a while.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And there's potential to them, but if you share an idea while it's still in that bad phase, while it's still, to use the embryo example, looks like it could be a cow, you know, it's not, it's gonna like, even if you have a supportive friend, it might not land in the way you want it to land, and then you start second guessing it, and you're like, wait, is this a good idea?
Sure.
You know, so you kind of need to let it cook for a little bit.
That's good advice.
And so anyways, this has been cooking, I would say, since Thanksgiving of last year, or maybe before Thanksgiving of last year. And then really, I think we decided, all right, we're going to greenlight this thing like sometime in like the late winter, spring of this year. And then came the process of how do you get it financed, that's
a scary check to write.
Which is ultimately you doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And you know, we're lucky. Well, actually, I'm skipping ahead in the story a little bit.
Okay.
But I'll skip ahead in the story. I ended up getting COVID about like 3 weeks before we were going to be in production for the film, or not, sorry, 3 weeks, like 3 days before we were going to be shooting this in like late July. And that seemed like the world's worst possible thing that could have happened because of the financial burden that would have put on us, because there's, you know, there was just a lot, without getting in the nitty gritty of film producing, there's just stuff that by pushing back that last minute, there's stuff that happens that causes expenses to pile up.
Sure.
But it turned out to be the best thing ever for the film, because it gave us the time to create a crowdfunding campaign. Yeah. Which is like a seed on Seed and Spark, and that allowed us to raise some extra financing. But most importantly, I would say it also gave us extra time to prepare for the project. That, looking back on it now, I think like it could have gone very poorly.
Would you put how much of an emphasis would you put on prep in terms of like going out to shoot?
A lot.
Yeah.
Prep is. I mean, we're talking about cliches being true, but the film is made in pre-pro. You know? Yeah. I'm really big on prep. At the same time, though, I'm big on exploration on set. Well, I think that's an important evolution in my process. Is that I used to be all prep. I used to be every cut is decided,
executed exactly as we've discussed.
Exactly. It's that whole like Kubrick thing, which, you know, I've realized isn't fully my process, is to control every single thing. Yeah. And I have a suspicion, not to be film geeky here, but I have a suspicion that Stanley Kubrick like probably didn't control as much as he made it out to be. I think you have to rely on contributions from others. Anyways, but I would say prep was everything. It still is a lot, but I would say exploration on set and being open to things changing. Because if you're not open to things changing on set, that'll murder you. Yeah, that'll absolutely kill you. And I think now because this experience of shooting this film is so fresh in my mind, when I watch films now, or like watch TV shows, without calling anyone in particular out, I'm noticing, they were too locked in on set. Like, it's you can call it out because you can see how it's a good idea in theory, but it wasn't executed in practice. And you need to be open to allowing a moment to be something different than what it was in your head originally. Yeah. And I think that's what allows you to have that sort of like mumblecore, quote unquote, performance style, is allowing your actors freedom to do things differently than is what in your head.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So.
That's cool, man. Well, I'm really excited about this project. I think it's going to really do a lot for you in terms of like whatever the next level is, or I don't know, but it's just, I think it from what I've seen of it, it looks really slick. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see it.
Hey guys, what's up? Sorry, one more quick intermission here. This is the teaser trailer for David's short film, Universe 25. Enjoy.
Good morning, I love you. Good morning, I love you. I'll always be there. Good morning, I love you. Good morning, I love you. I'll always be there.
And now, back to the program.
I should say what it's about.
Go ahead.
Because your viewers don't have any context for what we're talking about.
No, they don't.
So I should say what this thing is.
Let me ask the question. Dave, what's your short about?
Yes. Yes. So it is called Universe 25. It's about human lab rats trapped in a very strange experiment. And the experiment is basically a woman, she's put in a room where every 30 days she's given a new roommate. And she knows nothing about why she's trapped in this room beyond the fact that she's been taken and she's going to get a new roommate every 30 days. And essentially, it's asking the question, what would you do if you couldn't have a relationship that lasted longer than 30 days? So it kind of puts into question a lot of ideas about like, what do we live for? Do we live for the future? Do we live for the moment? You know, if you have no future to live for, how can you like find an enjoyable moment? You know, can you find an enjoyable moment? Yeah. I think we leave it a little more open to our audience I think we leave it a little more open to our audience to interpret that in the end. But that's kind of what it's about. It's a cool. It's like sci-fi. It's a bit thriller. It's a bit philosophical. So yeah, that's the short.
Love it. Why? What brought you to that idea, or what gravitated you towards those notions, or wanting to explore those things?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say now because I feel like writing is a strange explorative process where like the things that it's like we had a version of this thing earlier on where like it's nothing like what it is now. So it's just like it evolves over time. But I would say like what makes us passionate about making this movie is kind of some realizations I had while I was stuck in quarantine during the 2020 pandemic and not being able to work and not having like anything active that you're working towards. And I think it's just learning to be present with your moment, even if you're just like stuck in a room, which is basically what the film is being stuck in a room, but trying to find presence and happiness in that,
Okay. I could see a little commentary on, real life. That's
for sure. But I think it's not just like an allegory for the pandemic, but I think it's an allegory for all of life, because I'm a very ambitious dude and I have a lot of goals that I'm working towards. But everything's transient. Everything can be taken from us at any moment. Yeah. And I think what the concept of the film does is it just puts it guaranteed that you're going to lose this person every 30 days. And we're all going to lose everything, even our lives, not to take it to a dark place.
No. I mean, look, why does film exist? It's like, to me personally, like storytelling is one of the greatest, like, it's just one of the greatest things to commit your time towards. Cause that's literally how human beings have been able to communicate ideas, values, culture from generation to generation. And yes, the mediums have changed, but storytelling has been present for as long as civilization has existed. Yeah. We used to tell myths and fables and invented, and had religions that gave life and reality focus and context. And and then it went to like performance and things like that, and now we have film, we have multiple ways of telling stories. But I think, because to me, like that's the whole point. That's what makes the process and storytelling interesting, because if you're just going to make a movie or a short film that's about like a fight scene, or like a woman in peril that needs to like get away, and there's like no underpinning kind of like notions about how this director or this writer feels about it, or if I can't get any sense of that writer's like values, like I lose interest. I mean, don't get me wrong, like there's always gonna be like a cool fight scene or a cool like whatever, I'm down for that. But part of the reason why like movies like The Matrix or Lord of the Rings or whatever those movies are significant, not just because of their spectacle, but because of the underpinning like values and in storytelling that's like underneath all of that. Whether it's a short film or an indie or a big box office, I think that should be the aim, is to tell something that's like just something that says something about you as an artist and says something about the world and how you view it. It's important to have a point of view, because otherwise, why am I going to listen to this person's point of view over somebody else's? You know?
I think it's it's like the cavemen sitting around the campfire telling stories.
It's literally that. It's great.
It's, to me, it's like making movies or even watching movies to me was like church for someone who
I wasn't allowed to watch movies
because I never was religious. I was never raised religious, so to me that was my way of finding meaning and of like making sense of the world, was through movies, and not just through like stupid movies, but because you can get fed a vision of what life is from this sort of like I don't know, I don't want to call anyone specific out, but like there's certain things that sell a delusional version of what you should do in life.
Sure. Well, there's the fantasy, right? And I'm not talking about like wands and stuff. I'm just like the romantic comedy about like so being able to like delineate that from reality, I think is important.
For sure. For sure.
Cool, man. I don't know. I'm kind of out of questions.
All right. Well, we've had a pretty good run here.
We've had a pretty good run.
You're
always a great person to talk to. So thank you for doing this.
Well, I always have a good time talking to you too. For sure. Yeah.
No, but I think
it took a podcast for us to hang out. Unfortunately, I need to be better at hanging.
It's okay.
But I am a psycho, as this podcast has revealed.
That's okay.
Time. But yeah. For sure. Let's grab some drinkskis. So,
I like it. That's good. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we'll cut this and then we'll probably keep talking. But
cool. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. Yeah.